They stole it. They're thieves. In my opinion, they stole it. They're thieves. And it is very, very obvious, okay? No way that sick, lame, and lazy Joe Biden got more votes than any candidate in human history. 80 million? That Joe Biden, who can't handle his own dog in his living room, beat a once-in-a-thousand-year political force, Donald Trump? No, I don't accept it. We've been presenting you the evidence over the past several weeks. You've seen it. The mainstream media, they refuse to recognize it before they even look. They say it's been debunked. They say it's been unverified, whether it's Antrim County, the affidavits, or the evidence and the concerns expressed by Jimmy Carter 15 years ago that widespread mail-in voting could lead to big, big problems. They refuse to recognize it because, well, we know they're biased. More than biased, most of them really, really hate Donald Trump. And they don't want to talk about the weird spikes in the middle of the night. They don't want to talk about how a law in Pennsylvania was obviously unconstitutional. I can understand it. They can understand it. The Supreme Court can understand it. But we're surrounded by too many people who have no courage. State legislators, people in the media, lawyers, everybody just kind of wants to get on with it, get back to business as usual. I don't know how this thing is going to be resolved, but I have a very strong conviction still that somehow, in some way, Donald Trump will ultimately prevail. Ultimately, he will. The more I look at these two, especially Joe, it seems very, very unnatural. There's something just wrong about this. But for now, they're going through the motions, okay? They're calling him president-elect, even though he's not, even though according to the Constitution, he definitely is not. They're going through the motions. All right, and when you are in this phase, this kind of limbo phase, you do some big-ticket interviews. And one of the biggest celebrity interviews these days, celebrity interviewers, is Stephen Colbert. Stephen Colbert, and I don't think anybody looked good in this exchange. Colbert went down to Delaware to sit with, yes, below average Joe. This interview goes on forever. And I got to tell you, what comes through more than anything is that Joe is not up for the job. He is a very, very mediocre and damaged person, and his wife knows it. But maybe I'm reading a little bit too much into things. Let's see how it started, though.
It is my honor to sit down with the man from Scranton who made good. Please welcome the next president of the United States, Joseph R. Biden. Sir, thanks so much for sitting down with me today.
Well, thanks. I always enjoy being with you. Thank you for making a trip down to Wilmington, Delaware.
It's always nice talking to you, too.
All right. First off, I mean, look at the spacing. We all know how to handle COVID. 6 feet, right? This looks like Gorbachev and Reagan in Iceland, some filmmaker's version of what that would look like. A little bit dramatic, a little bit much, because Colbert, who works for CBS, you know, just before the election, Leslie Stahl from 60 Minutes interviewed President Trump, right? Made a big thing about masks. And here she is, off camera, just kind of almost flirting with these guys, right? That's close talking. I mean, look, I'm in the world. I came to work every day during COVID, taking necessary precautions. Nobody sits like that. It's all silly theatrics, right? Silly theatrics. But there is this. Joe Biden benefited enormously from COVID. He never would have made it this far. When Joe Biden ran for president in 1987, 1988, this is what it looked like, okay? This is like a traditional campaign. Look at that media mob all over the place. He couldn't handle the scrutiny. His campaign was over in, what, a matter of weeks, months, was it? He could not stop lying. And back then, the media, well, they weren't afraid. They certainly weren't afraid of Democrats. All right, back to the interview. I did learn that Joe Biden, well, there's an old saying, when you tell the truth, you never have to remember what you said. Take a look at this.
It wasn't until those folks came out of the fields down in Charlottesville that I realized something had to happen. And what happened was quickly our granddaughters asked for a meeting. They came to see us, and grandson and said, "You got to run, Pop." And that's when we decided to run.
Charlottesville, remember the tragedy that happened there. Joe Biden has said previously that he heard the president say very fine people on both sides, and at that moment, he had to know. This is the first time I ever heard anything mentioned about the grandkids, that the grandkids came over for a meeting. The both sides part is a lie. President Trump never said that he was referring to neo-Nazis as nice people. He expressly said they should be condemned. But here's what Joe Biden said last August.
It's also the third anniversary of that terrible day in Charlottesville. At that moment, I knew I couldn't stand by and let Donald Trump, a man who went on to say, when asked about what he thought, he said they were very fine people.
Very fine people on both sides. Now, look, maybe this is a minor point, but for me, it's significant because that entire message when he opened his campaign is a fraud. It is a fraud because he based it on something that Donald Trump never said. And he did say in that initial announcement, and he said again on August 12th, that's August 12th, when he introduced Kamala as his running mate, that it was in that moment, as soon as he heard Donald Trump say that, he knew he had to run for president. Last night on Colbert, he said he had the grandkids over, and they convinced him, Pop, you got to do this. Somehow that seems, I don't know, a bit more homespun or something like that, but small thing. But yeah, I do think I caught Joe. All right, more from the interview.
As much as you don't want it to happen, you know that the people who want to make hay in Washington are going to try to use your adult son as a cudgel against you. How do you feel about that, and what do you have to say to those people?
Well, look,
We'll leave it at that. You've heard his non-answers before on this question. This is a huge, huge vulnerability for Joe Biden. But, well, the mainstream media, they never press him on this. They never even go there. And even what Colbert just did, just like they're going to use this against you unfairly, right? No, we have fundamental questions about Joe Biden's integrity. His own campaign acknowledged that he may have met with Burisma. Wasn't on his official schedule, though. Unofficially, after hours. Wow, that is something else. Oh, and do you remember this guy? Again, this is not just about Hunter. We know he has problems. Every family, you know, I mean, people, wayward kids, whatever. But it's much more serious. This goes to you, Joe. Remember Lieutenant Bobulinski?
I remember looking at Jim Biden and saying, how are you guys getting away with this? Like, aren't you concerned? And he looked at me and he laughed a little bit and said, plausible deniability.
They had a whole system set up, allegedly. Yet we know the mainstream media protect Joe Biden. And a lot of other powerful people are all out to protect this guy. What do they owe him? I still don't know. All right, back to the interview. Jill Biden, one of the many reasons why I'm pulling for Trump here. I prefer Melania to Dr. Biden. Watch this.
I'm really looking forward to being First Lady and doing the things that I did as Second Lady, carrying on with military families and education and free community college, cancer that, you know, Joe and I have both worked on.
Cancer that, you know, Joe and I both worked on. Did you see this little item during the campaign? It was a little item and it went away really fast, but they put together a foundation. Do we have that headline, please? And yes, let's see here. Tax filings reveal Biden cancer charity spent millions on salaries, zero on research. Okay, by now you may have heard that Jill Biden has been maligned for her doctorate. She hasn't been. It's not her accomplishments. It's being pompous. Let's go to that Wall Street Journal op-ed by a guy named Joseph Epstein. I like to say this is the good Epstein who wrote this story. Is there a doctor in the White House? Not if you need an MD. This guy wrote a kind of a fun, I thought humorous essay with valid points that somebody with an education, PhD, is a little bit much, you know, a little over the top if they insist on being called doctor. Well, the whole world attacked this guy, and it was orchestrated by the Bidens. And this little nugget I found fascinating.
One of the things I'm most proud of is my doctorate. I mean, I worked so hard for it. And my, you know, Joe came when I defended my thesis.
Joe came when I defended my thesis. Now, I looked it up. Apparently, when you defend a thesis, it's not unheard of for friends and family to show up and cheer you on or just watch. I think it's a little whatever, but it does happen. But she's at the University of Delaware. Joe Biden at the time is the vice president of the United States. At the University of Delaware, there is the Biden Institute. You see this? Okay. Name for Joe Biden. I mean, I don't know. Did that have something to do with her getting the PhD? I heard it wasn't so hot from people who know these things. But all right, maybe I'm nitpicking a little bit here. This part, though, I don't think is nitpicking. And I think more needs to be discussed about it. Stephen Colbert, in a weird way, agrees with me as well.
You will be the second Catholic president. I'm surprised more hasn't been made of the second Catholic president.
The Pope called me.
He called you?
Personally called me.
Really?
To congratulate me. And matter of fact, I just had a nice phone call with His Eminence, the new cardinal in Washington, who said he just got back from Rome and the Pope signed a book for me.
Okay, he's bragging that he knows the Pope. His staff is always telling we're going to finally have a president who goes to church. And, I think that would be great. Joe has made what a nice guy he is part of his brand. Now, we've all seen flashes of anger, but I'm hearing more and more about his religion, and I think having a relationship with God is the most important thing. The most important thing. Now, Lindsey Graham was a friend of his, Republican senator from South Carolina. He is a Republican. He's very loyal to Donald Trump, and apparently Senator or Vice President Biden feels betrayed by that. And Stephen Colbert wants to know, hey, can you guys ever come together and be friends again?
Lindsey Graham, do you think you guys can patch it up and work together?
Lindsey's been a personal disappointment because I was a personal friend of his. But look, I don't think, I think I can work with the Republican leadership.
I don't know. If you're going to talk about how well you know the Pope and how often you go to church, and when given the opportunity to show forgiveness, reconciliation, took a pass and just said, I can get along with Republicans. Wow. Isn't that something? Wow. But he's right when he said this. Watch.
Can you reach across the aisle to people who will be using this as an attack on you when it is such a personal attack because it's about family?
But if it benefits the country, yes. I really mean it. Because we know who we are. You're
a better man than I. I'm not sure if I could do that.
Don't get me wrong. It doesn't mean I'm not angry. It doesn't mean I wasn't angry, and it doesn't mean if I were back in the days in high school, I wouldn't say, come here, and go around. But
you have to take the high road.
And because, look, there's so much at stake. And the American people, I think they can smell the phoniness, smell what's true and what's not true.
You're damn right about that, Joe. You are damn right about that. Got to take the high road. All right, wrapping up here. And I do think it's nice that Jill has this arrangement, but take a look.
Biden, I know you have a prayer partner that you picked up
I do.
on the campaign. Who is that? And I've never had a prayer partner. What's a prayer partner?
I could be your prayer partner.
I'm in.
It was a woman I met. It was, I had a real struggle with my faith after Bo died because I just didn't believe he was going to die. And we were in South Carolina at a church, and a woman came up to me. And
an African-American church.
Yeah. And she put her hand on me, and she said, Jill, I want to be your prayer partner.
Prayer partners are great, and it doesn't matter whether or not they're black or white. Pandering politicians, they wonder why we don't like career politicians. Just so you know, it was an African-American church. What difference does it make? None at all.
You just watched Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news channel, now in more than 70 million homes. You can get Newsmax TV on your cable system or check your cable guide. And if your system doesn't carry Newsmax, call them, tell them you want Newsmax TV, because we're real news for real people.